Good morning, LinkedIn. Happy Friday, September 27th. Uh, Rob enjoyed his time so much last time. We got him to come back and maybe do this on the regular. We're building community content, we're building confidence, we see all this stuff, great stuff going on. We just want to, figure out new, valuable ways to make sure we get as many eyeballs on this stuff as possible, keep sharing knowledge. So happy to have you back, Rob. How you doing, man?
Um, Very good. Today is my birthday and I'm off. And I was so excited that you were talking about building and giving confidence to other people and answering the question of there's so much content everywhere that's pretty good, or I'm not sure how, like, what should I be, excuse me, what should I be looking at? So I'm glad we're going to dive into some of that today. If you were wondering, I'm 80 now. I know I look younger, but that is the
Almost.
birthday for me. Yeah, and Jay Schwedelson, my boy, sent me this. It's the only light blue I'll ever wear. I think you understand. I don't. I
That's
usually
fair.
look better in orange, but I am rocking the Guru blue. That's it. That's as close as I'll get.
Hey, that's what community is all about. It's representing, you know, everybody else and always bringing the value.
Yep.
So yeah, we've been talking like this is kind of, this is a challenge right now in the ecosystem. As far as we know, there's knowledge gaps. We know there's a bunch of people creating, building in silos, a bunch of people throwing stuff on LinkedIn, creating videos, creating some really cool stuff if you happen to see it, right? And one of the challenges of LinkedIn specifically is, I don't, I, I'm guessing other people have realized this, especially when you're trying to engage, right? You want to tell somebody how you have an immediate reaction, but you look at it on your phone, you're in the middle of doing something. If you lock the phone or if you swipe away, you're never going to see it again. So it's
Yep.
like, I just like it. Okay, where was that post? Um, so I'm just going to show like a great example of that. And also, like, this post happens to be talking about this challenge. So I think it's a good place to start. Just started putting this doc together. Um, just to collect, like, even collecting all these links, man. It's some work. And we've got, Kyle's been doing a lot of things with tips and tricks. He does a weekly newsletter. I started putting one together. Just, it's amazing. And it's still surprising, like, just because, like, I go live every day, right, multiple times, and there's people that tell me they really love like one show but have not even they were not even aware that I was doing, you know all these other shows with all these other experts, right? So
The
it's literally like,
algo giveth and the algo taketh away. I have videos I'm convinced people have seen just because I've seen them so many times, and people that have been with, the RP or that people I've known for a long time are like, "Hey man, what is this? I saw this the other day. Wow, it's 2 years old." I've had, I've legitimately,
yeah,
I've had stuff where I post something, and just ask my wife, like, tell me when you get notified. Like, let's see the delay. We're standing right next to each other, and it'll be 30 or 40 minutes. So I think it is helpful. There's also this conundrum, I would say, like social conundrum to your point of liking or engaging in your mind, right? So when you hold your phone up or when you see something and say, "Man, that was cool. I'm glad Chris Carolyn made this piece of content," but you don't say anything, people aren't aware of how much value potentially it does bring. So I'm glad we can highlight some of this today and be like, "Hey, although I did not like this real time, it was great. You should know that because now we're talking about it." So forgive my, social media in etiquette or whatever it would be. This is a cool idea, man. Glad to be here doing it with you.
yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. um and this stemmed, like, we actually led a couple of brain dates last week at Inbound talking about like co-creating on LinkedIn. And somebody brought up the fact that they had been creating content. Chris Bryant had been creating content once a week, for 4 months earlier this year, wasn't seeing any kind of metrics or any kind of measurable thing. qualitative or quantitative, to tell him that it was valuable for either him or the audience, right? Stops doing it, then comes to inbound and has people coming up to him saying, "Hey man, that video you did was really valuable for me." And it's like, this is the part when you're trying to explain to others who aren't doing it, like the lurk habit is strong on LinkedIn, whether it's because you don't have time, whether it's because you don't want to be seen on LinkedIn while you're at work. Maybe I ran into that a lot. There's just so many variables in play, and it's definitely having some faith that if you put it out there, we want to stay away from if you build it or if you create it, they will come mindsets. But if you're giving value, right? If you're putting value out there and it's in front of a bunch of other people, it's very likely that somebody is getting value somewhere, and they don't always, like you say, they don't always have time to tell you. They're not always in a place to show you that. So this post from Kim Hacker at Arrows, let me see if I can just make this a little bit bigger. I think there's something missing from a lot of the HubSpot content out there. I was just filling out the post inbound feedback survey, and I realized we rarely hear from the people using HubSpot day in and day out. We get plenty of insights, tips from solutions partners, app partners, and even some HubSpotters. But what about the admins at scaling companies who live and breathe HubSpot? An inbound session highlight for me was Peter, RevOps manager at Playo, sharing what he'd change in the post-sales HubSpot setup if he could start over again. That's the kind of content we need more of. Real people sharing how they're using and optimizing HubSpot every day. A few other HubSpot ops people we know and trust deeply with this are Tillman, Scott, and Matthew. Shout out to Matthew. We just did our Friday show every Friday at 8 a.m. Just an admin talking about properties, right? And all things related to admin life. We just talked about what he thought about inbound and what scared him and what excited him from inbound. So how do you receive this? Like, when you see this, is this resonating? Do you think there's just not enough people creating it, or we're not seeing what's already being created?
Yeah, I'm weird. So I one spot of this stands out to me. We rarely hear from the people using HubSpot. That does not mean they're not talking about HubSpot. That just means there's no audio, there's no insight to that, or there's no exposure, or there's not near enough proximity, or people don't know where the hell to listen. But this is, interestingly enough, just based on this, and I don't know, the very first thing I saw when I saw Arrows, who should we hear from, is Stuart Balcom. He's not even, so there's this delay socially where you have a brand or a personal impression and people just, life happens. It'll be 1 or 2 months where you feel like you've seen a video or heard something recently. And the HubSpot ecosystem in particular moves at the speed of, I would say, Dharmesh would say, like, moves at the speed of delight, right? Which is pretty, Dharmesh, if you're listening, you can use that. There are tons of people with feedback. HubSpot is probably one of the best I've ever seen, and I'm biased because I haven't seen that many of listening to the users, the customers, and differentiating between the two, like end users versus admin versus whoever. So I agree that they're rarely heard from. I just think it's a mechanism issue of how to hear, how to amplify. That's why we're here. It was like, hey, well, you ask about hearing from us, here we are. We can point you to Sprocketeer, right, or something where there's tons of questions, tons of feedback, tons of people that are using the system as end users every single day, and I would want some of those people, right, to speak.
Yeah.
People that are helping to close that feedback loop on the end.
Right. No, yeah, I think it is a channel. It's a channel issue, and the traditional mechanisms, the traditional platforms for sharing knowledge, in an ecosystem that is moving at the speed of delight. And I know
good.
I've heard that before, and I think I'm just putting it together that the word light is inside of that word, and uh, man, that works way together.
If I have heard that before, I forgot, which is totally possible. Like I said, it's my birthday, and I'm 100. So, but it is a
Yeah,
cool
I
cool
think
idea.
we it's raised, the age is raising like every time Rob mentions it today. So we'll see how old he can get by the end of this show. Um, and this is where like this, so this is in the context of a specific question. If you could bring any speaker to next year's Inbound, who would you want to hear from and why?
Brian Kreutz,
And
shout out Brian.
what's that?
I was just saying mine would be Brian Kreutz. Shameless RP, plays one of the most brilliant people ever, and he helped facilitate Shadab and our playbooks team figuring out um, net revenue retention in HubSpot. So I think everybody would want to hear from him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of my point here. It's like, so if we say Inbound is a traditional channel to go and share information like once a year, right? Well, HubSpot moves at the speed of delight and the markets move at that speed as well. The amount of work that it takes to submit and get accepted and then prepare, it doesn't, for me, it's not like the math isn't working. And, you know, um, that's why I started going live every day, just to kind of prove to myself first that you can hit that cadence. Cause that's where it's like once a year, like as an individual who's not doing it for some kind of company benefit, right? Like a user or an admin. Literally the only value I get is sharing knowledge that I think could help somebody if I'm an admin and I show up to this and put all the work in, right? If it's related to how things get done in HubSpot, the chances that you actually create like a little bit of misinformation or misdirection because the platform has changed as you've been working on this. Even George, I mean, like George is preparing for this AI talk, right?
For
And
three
there was
months,
like,
right? And then by the time I mean, yeah,
and there was
I
like
think I see
five
where you're going.
things
Yeah,
that happened, like five news things that happened. Plus, he's got to follow the announcements of HubSpot,
yeah,
right? And since he's so good at AI, what he showed in his event is how you can just, record the audio of the keynote and then turn it into an article like days later. But that's kind of the speed that if we're asking people to participate and share their knowledge, this whole, once a year thing doesn't, we got to figure out another way.
I don't think we have to figure it out at all. You just said Inbound was a channel. Whatever, maybe. But if it is, it's a channel that's only open for 3 days out of 365. That's a problem. The amount of value and content and sessions is probably overwhelming to people because they can't attend them all, and they're not just living HubSpot or being at Inbound for 3 days for a conference, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong there at all. What I'm saying to you and what you're hinting around is that you could do Inbound every day of the year and it probably not be enough to keep up with all the updates, breakthroughs, best practices of the that the ecosystem is capable of producing. So part of this and hopping on is just intended to say, like, just because, I mean, some of these people are doing it, like Jay, right, from the hat, he has a podcast now on marketing tips, do this, not that. It's not just Inbound that he speaks at, but I think that's the vibe. Is like, man, I can't wait to hear Kyle Jepson. Kyle Jepson now does two or three different podcasts or the Monday morning update, all that stuff, so you can find him more often. I'm not sure or aware of how many people like at that level do that, right? And there's only one Kyle, there's only one Jay, but that doesn't mean that the other people out there, like a Chris Carolyn, a Danielle Urban, even people that aren't doing necessarily video, shouldn't be, right? I think some of these people should offer their value more. And if you have, an iPhone and the internet, that's really all you need to be able to put that into circulation.
Yeah.
Because getting feedback on what it is you're doing, like in video or in content, is helpful as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, for sure. And that's where like I found, and this is where I appreciate your comments after we did this the first time, like, almost no prep, right? We got to find a way to make that okay,
yep,
right? Because the real prep, like the prep that people put into some of their LinkedIn posts is a lot of work, right?
yep,
And what you, because of the ephemeral nature of the algorithm, like you could do that post like 20 more times over the next month, right? And hit different people every time, turn it into videos. And then if you decide to do that, and it's like, okay, let's go talk about it on a show with Chris or Rob, you already did the work. Now we're just talking about it out loud, and it's a
yep,
completely different format. And that just, like, everybody has value from a perspective of the experiences you can share. In this case, as a HubSpot user, partner, any stakeholder in the ecosystem is going to resonate with somebody else in the ecosystem. It's too big. There's too many people for it not to resonate with somebody. And the more you do it, like you say, you start to find your voice. You start to refine it. Like, one of my takeaways from the event, like, I this is why I like the keynotes, or the I forget what they call them, the main, like the famous people that show up, like Ryan Reynolds,
celebrities.
right? And like, I never know what kind of value that I'm going to get. I just know I'm going to get value. And his talk, like, from a creator and content, content strategy perspective, like, resonated like unbelievable. And the two things he said, right, are, first, like, if you can find a way to create joy, for joy to be an outcome, then you just win, right? Uh, but two, you got to be willing to suck at it first,
Yes,
right? Did that hit as hard for you as it did for me?
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, probably harder, and it's because I'm, this. Uh, I would say like a weird black sheep pariah, not even outcast, just like I'm this mayor character, and I have this cool backstory of being a firefighter. And Ryan Reynolds is now gone from Deadpool to like creative director for, I mean, Mint Mobile. He's now showing that like his personal brand actually moves the needle for him and for other companies. That was, I don't, that resonated with me. If you know, you know, right? But I mean, more so than that, our theme, right? And maybe saw me in the orange suit or the green one, was it's not magic, it's Rev Partners. And he immediately, right, one of the first things after the Deadpool guy in the front, shout out Sam Queen. After that, they asked him what he thought about marketing, and he was like, "Marketing is magic to me." And I mean, I was like, that could not have gone any better. Because we put cards out on the seats before, just for that little cool effect. So that was like the most synchronicity moment ever. But he started talking. I felt like I was listening to myself. Right? He said marketing he used to hate because it felt like it was required. It was just something that you did. It was just an ad. It was. And he said he didn't like that. But at the same time, why can't you make a silly ad? Right? It's just meant to, so I'm hanging on every word. I'm like, man, this guy has read my bio. He's talking directly to me, or as if he were me. So yeah, it really resonated a lot. The other part, I don't know how directly he said this, but it's like, to have an impact or influence, you don't, he said, I'm still learning. And anybody that says they have it, basically anybody that says they have it all figured out or they know exactly what to do, is full of crap. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. I'm just telling you what worked for me, how I thought about it, and getting started and being willing to fail and willing to iterate. And yeah. So to sum that up, his talk specifically, to your point, I didn't know what kind of value I was going to get, but I didn't know what kind of value Reese Witherspoon would bring last year. And her talk was one of the most impactful ones I've heard as well. Right? My Southern grandmother used to say, "You're either a drain or a radiator," as
Man,
far as energy levels. And I was just like,
I remember that one.
oh, like melted off of the, yeah. It was great. Loved the keynote, and bonus points to Brian Reynolds. If you ever hear this saying marketing is magic last week, thank you. Big props there.
Yeah, no, that's like, that's it, right? Like, that's why the only requirement for Let's Build has been like, something you're passionate about, and maybe it relates to HubSpot, right? Like, if the passion's not there, you're not going to create. It's very hard to manufacture joy and authenticity, right? If there's no passion there, and there's a ton of passionate people. Like, if HubSpot can check any box, it's the ability to create, raving fans of the product, and they're all over the place. And now I think it's about transitioning and helping the community transition. Like, we're not stuck in Sprocketeer, chats. We're not stuck in LinkedIn posts. We're not even stuck on hugs anymore that happen once a month or once a quarter, right? I think they're going in the right direction with connect.com. I think that was a brilliant move to kind of connect that, if you will, to your inbound, clicks. That certainly got me to take it more seriously, because how easy is that to just go find all the people, instead of trying to download the spreadsheet from the app.
Yeah.
But with that, let's look at the basics. Like, if we want to build on this, and definitely want to build this with you guys, like, make this into something that is valuable, like figuring out the order. Like, does it make sense to go like Monday through Friday, or topic based, or, whatever the latest product update was? Like, please, let us know. But I think, as a foundation, if you are in the community and you want to keep up with what's going on in HubSpot, like, Kyle Jepson, hands down, the best way to do that. Just kind of, I like to think about it as much energy, and, just look at this orange hat face, right? Like, he brings himself into this content, but at the end of the day, it's black and white. Like, here's the latest product update. This is what it does, right? Here's, how to think about it, maybe. But if we're not following here, this is step one. Yeah.
Step 0. If you are an admin of any kind and you touch HubSpot in any way and you don't know Kyle or follow, you're behind, I would say. And that's not meant to be a judgment call or any of that, but his job, his vocation, he earns money for making content to make HubSpot easier to use, understand, and up to date. One of the key things with this, I think I've seen Max and Kyle on several of these, right? And it's like, well, we had 8 pages last week, and it was a short week, and here are 7 pages of updates. It's requisite. So, I mean, if your livelihood depends on knowing how to use HubSpot in any way, and you're not paying attention to Kyle, then you shouldn't right now. Go to Kyle, follow him wherever. Move number one.
And if you've watched, for those of us who have been watching him intently, like, watching his journey from Academy only to creating some videos around product updates, to realizing he had to start doing that every day if he had any hope of keeping up, to adding an admin hug, and now these weekly briefings, with Max. For one dude, he is doing the bulk of the work when it comes, like, to HubSpot. And that's where, like, back in March, I was like, okay, instead of complaining that they're not making more Kyles, like, I'm just going to start doing stuff every day, and we'll see what happens.
They should. So exactly to that point, and I would never, Kyle Jepson, if you don't know this, is one of the most genuine, kind human beings in the world. He is a national treasure, period. I've made several videos dedicated specifically to him, right? Real admin. The Jepsons, I did like a fake thing, so he's amazing. That said, because of the 7 pages of updates, there's a lot of breadth, right? Like, a lot of Kyle can help you with this, but how and when and where should I use them? And if it's not something that's new this week and it was 2 weeks ago and people haven't figured out use cases for, or they're just starting or something's in beta, he does not have the luxury anymore to go deep on some of this stuff. That is where the community is most needed. And so using him almost as like the satellite and point to, here's who does this. I see on their admin I made a commitment that if I'm going to be this inbound person, right, and I'm with RP, I need to be more of a social listener and involved in the community. So I've been going to every admin hug, and he himself starts off with like, here's all the places you can find us, right? And it's like 5 minutes of, we do one of these, and you should join Sprocketeer, and here's this other news. Like it's even through him, it's still a lot. So part of the battle is what you're scrolling through. I mean, you're showing it on the screen right now, like using this as a guide to find more specific information or ask more specific questions so that you can get solutions that you're looking for. It's just it's become too broad, and with the ability to be very deep in use case or solution. And so Kyle's a great starting point, but if you want to know how to do something in real estate, maybe you should look at this person. Or if you want to focus more on Ops Hub or AI implement, that is where you now start to segment some of the content that comes out of the community and ecosystem.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's a great point, because that's where it's. I mean, not to mention, like, the math doesn't work for Kyle doing one per day, and there being 800 updates in a year, and he takes
Yeah.
some time off. So it's like getting more people involved is definitely the key, and that's where you start to see people are doing this stuff. But I think, like, the next step, because I started listing these out, and I think another great resource that I just found, because I have a way where I've been doing a newsletter for Let's Build, and including like hugs in that throughout the week, and I've been doing it fairly manually. I just found this today, um, this events calendar that you can easily find like past hugs and future hugs. And this happened because I was like, oh man, I usually do this ahead of time. I don't know how I'm going to get the past links, right? So I just saw this calendar option here, clicked on it, and man, this is, if you are somebody who likes to watch hugs. And again, this is a newer motion, because prior to 2020, hugs were in person. They were not virtual, right? And you see some going back to in person, right? So again, this speaks to the challenge of, at the end of the day, we know we need to get together and talk about this stuff, right? Like, how do we do that from a true, like, community-led perspective, and just create as many of these, listening posts or guide posts, if you will, on the journey, to say, like, okay, as soon as you, just like we would on our own websites, right? As soon as you identify as this, like, this is where we want you to go. This is the kind of content you need to look for. The
This
traditional
is only
mechanisms.
hugs, correct?
Uh, I believe so. I haven't confirmed like 100%.
It looks like it. I mean, whether it is or not, this is what, 1/100th of the possible event, like HubSpot content out there. So even this is, it's helpful, but it's not, to your point. There's so much more that could be on here. I would be, Chris, if you want to build something, like a calendar or list of this across really the ecosystem, that has Sprocket Pod, that has this show, that has Kyle Jepson, and Curate. I mean, the irony of ironies is that we can still, or you can still do this, and throw me on here anytime. But people are, maybe they don't want to wait until Friday to build stuff and get updates from you. So you could kind of take the charge and make this events.hubspot calendar look like an empty document with all of the like, hey, here's the hugs and here's a schedule for the next month, but also here's this upcoming thing and what it's about. Here's that would be useful to me, useful to a
Yeah.
lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Consider it a birthday gift to me, buddy. How about you just you can give it to me next week or whenever you start putting it together, but that's what I want for my birthday.
All righty. All right. No, that's a fair request. Again, of somebody like if I'm saying that I want to, really help. I think the challenges that we're experiencing is like this is how I think in ecosystems like this is what community led looks like. There's a transition period of saying like HubSpot literally cannot, step up on our behalf to lead from the community. They can do their best to create, the spaces for it. And we definitely need them to do that. But as far as like getting everybody together and, creating these spaces, like we're just a couple of guys. Kyle is just one guy. A lot of people are doing work, but I think the coordination and curation, and keep hearing that related to AI and AI context as well. Like we're entering a world where curation
Yes,
is going to be one of the most high value skills like anybody can develop.
it's also presentation. Also, Dharmesh famously once, I know this is famous at least because I remember it, but somebody asked him if he could go back and learn a new skill, or if he, other than programming, what's one thing, and he mentioned storytelling. So I think there's a part of it in that vein. But I also like, maybe you don't want to hear. Maybe it's part of the presentation that makes it not resonate as much. Like, no offense to you, but offense to me. I guess offense to both. There are people out there like Lexi Gilbert from RP, or Danielle Urban, or Deanna Gill. Maybe just just being a different presenter, a different tone, will help the content resonate more with the people viewing it. So I'm a huge advocate for that. I just it feels weird to me that I feel like my goal is to get attention and direct it immediately to those who are more worthy, like whose merit deserves it more. Because at the end of the day, you can laugh and I can tell jokes and all that, but it's really just in an effort to get people pointed, in the right direction. And if that is at, an all female or whatever podcast, or maybe it's something that's not on video at all. Maybe it's that comes into preference and meeting people where they are. So some of the function of a community is to be inclusive, and I think that's a part of it, is to make avenues or like sub channels for people to learn how they want to have content presented to them in a method that would resonate more. So if you need help doing that or thinking through that, I think part of the value, if any, that I bring is just my approach, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's spot on because I still have, you know, people, and I'm thankful when they do share, but it's like I don't want to watch a video. Like,
Yeah.
stop sending so many videos. Like, I'd love to just read through, skim something really quickly, and that's where we still have a ton of people doing that, right? Like, there's
Yep.
a bunch of posts, like this one, building lookup properties in HubSpot. I mean, come on, like people have been asking for that for a long time, right? And we've got a text, post with a GIF. Like this is where it's like for me, I've started with videos just because it's if you're into the repurposing game, like if you start here, everything else like becomes possible. It's much harder. It's becoming easier, but it's harder to go from text to video, right? Um, and that's where it is like talking to people about like so many people have said, hey, if I just have somewhere to put this stuff, like I have like 10 half done, guides or playbooks just sitting in the G drive, that it's hard when I know that the only place for me is on LinkedIn.
I would
And
disagree
like,
with that vehemently. It's not on LinkedIn only. It's on Pinterest. It's on wherever, and it's wherever people derive value. That might be LinkedIn. I know people that only have LinkedIn. LinkedIn uh, is a professional network. It's intended to get people hired. I mean, that's what it's for at its, I guess, base functionality level. So there's this real concept of sometimes the medium is the message, right? So if it's text to video or video to text, or if it's a map, if I'm walking you through a process like a roadmap or a product roadmap for an onboarding, or let's just whatever that looks like, would you rather it be a document or would you rather it be a literal visual map of dates, time? So sometimes the medium, whether it
Yeah.
be video, audio, text, map, schematic, is important. And I just think there's a lot more optionality needed within that to meet what people are wanting and how they want to see it. I'm a visual learner. I know people that are audio learners, and I know people where they have to do it themselves kinetically or hands on to be able to best intake or learn and retain information. My contention is that it doesn't just have to be LinkedIn. YouTube is a more of a how-to tutorial. Like I know people that go and look up how to build things or how whatever from YouTube. So that's also an avenue. But at the same time, you just mentioned they want like a short executive brief, whatever version. You could do that on TikTok. Why not? I mean, 100% people are going to be there anyway, a lot of them. You could start doing that as one of the most famous sales books is what the Admiral of Naval Ravikant that was essentially a Twitter thread that he turned into a book. You could do that with how to. I mean, there's almost infinite optionality. I just think people have been used to doing stuff one way. It's weird whenever I get with a Chris Carolyn or somebody that's really good at building because they like process and they like structure and they like routine and they like very specific step. Maybe this isn't you, but for me, it's
I
like
was about to
why?
say, like, we need to get to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah, well, yeah, just a guess, but for
I'm
me,
glad it looks like that. I am glad it looks like that.
are you not as organized as you put off, or what does it look like there?
I thrive in organized chaos for
Same. So I
sure.
mean, like the point was like the two are needed, right? Like there's
Hmm.
somebody at one point said, um, what? Why can't the lights oscillate instead of it just being a? That'd be love to look cool. And now we have this. So the horrible example, but that's if anybody is listening to me talk and it hasn't shoved a pencil into their ear yet or whatnot, this is the point. It's intended to help. RP's mission statement is to unlock potential for human flourishing, and I feel like going from a firefighter to somebody in this seat, it's my debt, to like if this message reaches you, like people talk about breaking into B2B SaaS or whatnot all the time, and I've been hopefully helpful, at least fortunate to say like, look at me, you can 100% do it. So
Yeah.
I'm off my soapbox now. I felt like I got the birthday monologue out of the way. Now we can proceed to business as usual.
Yeah. No, it's well said, man. Because the other thing, like the other part of this, I think a part of the challenge is just getting out of the strictly business, mindset, and that we're just humans trying to help other humans. The more you put KPIs on it and all these other like non-human things, really, the harder it's going to be to get started. The harder it's going to be to, have confidence. Um, and if you are, let's say less passionate about SaaS, um, and you've had some experience in other spaces, because this is a gap everywhere right now as far as figuring out how to share knowledge online in meaningful ways. And I'm starting to play with that in the material science space where I'm from. Of course, I do have some, let's say like client-based reasons for wanting to do that. It's not just because I want to experiment like based on no goals. But as we've done 3 episodes, and this is where, like no, I haven't even developed, any kind of podcast like assets. It's just like, hey, I found another person who really wants to start doing this too. They have knowledge to share. We get on every Thursday. And yesterday, you get these inbound connection requests from the exact ICP, like just out of nowhere. And I asked the guest, or the co-host, like, hey, did you know this person? Like, cause that's always a thing. Like the whole point of tagging other people and having other people on, you access each other's audience. And he's like, I said, did you know this person beforehand? Um, and he said, no, but I know they're a customer of ours. And I'm like, always in teaching mode, always connecting the dots to the kind of value that that means. And I said, well, this is what scalable customer success looks like, right?
Yep.
Because your team might not even know. Like, because he said, I just joined this organization and I'm responsible for this thing that you guys are talking about.
Yep.
Right. And there's, as a manufacturer, and that there's SaaS in in the manufacturing space too. You can't foresee that, right? There's no way to plan for that. The only way you can is to do things like regular, trainings or regular things that often cost money for both sides.
Yep.
And that's why they don't happen. So then we have these new people coming in. There's no place for them to go to understand what it really means to be doing that job day in and day out. Right. So just don't sleep on the ability to share information in any space right now in a way that will help, somebody out. So even if, like, it was easy for me to do it in the HubSpot ecosystem because there is a LinkedIn, there's a massive LinkedIn presence, for HubSpot specifically, that made it easy for me to get instant qualitative feedback, people that wanted to participate in the shows, right? So it might not be that quick for everybody, but this time happened in like 3 episodes without a bunch of promotion, right? And it's just like in these spaces where there's such a lack of this content, of this knowledge sharing, the only thing we do know is there's a bunch of people out there who are looking for it, right?
Yep. I mean, so my head immediately went to um, talking about content and sharing and familiarity, and you doing this by like because it's almost this crusade, right? Of like, doesn't matter. I'm gonna do it anyway. Talking about Ryan Reynolds earlier, one of the questions the guy asked Ryan Reynolds, who I don't remember his name. I know he's an author. Was like, you've mentioned this is something you're passionate about, and passion is actually from like Latin, and it means to suffer. Me, whatever it's intuited as, like me waking up and coming on here is fun, but it's like it's the day off. It's my birthday. To me, this is getting me ready to suffer for the community and bringing awareness to people, namely our peers, because I don't care where some of them would work after this if they left. It's good. It's the right intent and it's the right people to help with solutions. Some of that is I don't think there's anything more powerful than like the demonstration of and witnessing of passion of somebody willing to suffer for success or for an end result. And that's something I, that is innately and exclusively human. That can't be witnessed through AI. Like and a bot that is taught or trained or learned to do whatever, there's no element of suffering in that. That's really weird and philosophical, but it's why people can't explain why an AI video just is weird or ick or cringe or off-putting. It's not human and it's obvious. And so some of that discrepancy is of the like the if I were to demonstrate or if you were to witness like actual passion, that looks like a bunch of different things. For you, maybe you're tired, and you don't want to go on LinkedIn, but that would be suffering, and that's evident. So somebody that is um, how they present themselves may not be the trying to think of a good example. Somebody like a self-proclaimed, I don't speak well or I don't like being on camera. That's all right. You showing up or you, who is the guy from HubSpot that answered all of the questions, right? Kirsten, it's a K name. He had a whole cutout last year, and they did that as a tribute to him.
Carson, I think, from the
Carson,
community.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that was like an ongoing, continuous demonstration of passion towards the community. Do you think it was easy for him to answer all those and go like probably not, but that's a demonstration of, hey, I'm willing to inconvenience myself at the very least to be able to offer value back to the community. So that's
Yeah.
all
No,
that to
that's a
say, I love what you're doing here. And if it feels like sometimes it's not worth it or people aren't watching, to your point you just made about this guy, that's really not the point. Like, you should do it anyway. You should provide value first. The rest will take care of itself.
right. And definitely like for me, if it's not planned in person, I'm pretty socially awkward. Like, if I'm not supposed to be talking to you and you don't come up to me first, it's very unlikely that I'm going to say the first thing to you. That's why
Yeah,
I
I've
was,
witnessed that at Inbound when I
yeah,
accidentally interrupted you, and then I was like, "Well, man, I'll talk to you later."
yeah.
But
No, it was a revelation this year. Like, so this is one of the tricks where I don't do well in person. I'm by myself right now in my office, like a planned thing, and that creates the space for others to be able to, come up to me instead. I learned this early on with the beard. Like it was like an immediate icebreaker, and I was like, wow, this just changes everything.
yeah, I did
Um,
that with the suit, and I thought I had this handy. I was messing with it yesterday, but the whole icebreaker concept, I may have done this to you where I had the golf ball. I did that on all the interviews. People get interviewed at these conferences, but I had a golf ball in my hand where I would like grab it from behind their ear or pull it out of nowhere. I literally walked around Inbound for 3 days with a palmed golf ball, and I would go into like wash my hands every 10 minutes. But talk about like to your point about the beard, the ultimate icebreaker is like, oh, now there's permission, now there's something to start, now there's this human kind of connection, not a hi, I'm going to talk to you about that. You have to have something first for more of a permission based interaction.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, this is a trick. Like, if you're not great in person, or if you think you're not great, if you think you have nothing to share, so I'm happy. I know Rob is too. Like, let's have a chat. Like, there's so many people with tons of great knowledge out there, expertise. All we're doing here is, we could have very easily had this meeting as a part of like a content strategy. Like, here's how we're going to help people, and then we're going to do this and that. Instead, it's just coming on camera, you know, talking about the same things that might usually happen off camera, and just sharing. Right.
Yep.
That's the first step. And again, you will find your voice, and you have something to share. Every human does. Like, just find some of your experiences. So often when you're doing this every day, uh, it's the conversation you just had.
Yep.
Right. It's like, man, this question was so good. Having this space, that's one of the best things I've experienced. Once I made the decision, and this is where the difference or the challenge between output and outcomes, right? You hear a lot of, it doesn't matter how many things you do if the outcome isn't there. And it's like, well, consistency
Yeah.
is one of the most important factors today. If
It's
you know
the
you got to be
most.
top of mind, right?
Yeah.
And
I was going to say to that, look, you just said you're socially awkward and building this space is one of the best things. And I do not do well, if you can imagine this, live or recorded, right? I don't know why I have anxiety about it. That's been helped a bunch immediately since Inbound because I had this epiphany where like what's weird is working. Like the thing that is working is what I find to be weird. The Southern accent, the dad jokes, the nervousness. Like people, number one, can't sense that as well as have the self perception. I've done tons of this where I look back and be like, man, I was freaking out right there for a minute, and people say we couldn't have ever noticed that, right? But also the other, the magic trick and the mayor persona and being just kind of aloof and honest and authentic, right? That is what I guess was most nervous about, but it's what people have reported they like, right? It's endearing. So part of, I mean, socially awkward or not, you are very disarming and create a space in which people can talk, and that's great. You don't have to be in people's face or talk. You don't have to do that. People have different preferences. So if anybody takes advice from this, even to you, Chris, I would say like sometimes what you think might be weird is actually what is the thing that is working, or the set of things that is working in your presentation or your strategy or your message or just you. A lot of times it's just you You need to be okay with that yourself. This is really me just talking to myself, reminding myself
Yeah.
after last week. But I had, you said it's sometimes it's the last conversation you had. That was one of the last ones I had. Somebody came up and said something pretty direct. It's funny now. They're like, Rob, I used to love your content when it was funny. And right. But I was like, thanks. And I mean, the story continues. Like, I mean, it's great now. I just thought, that was so refreshing that, and I feel like you've kind of, you know, do you intend to do funny stuff anymore? Like, and this is a whole other LinkedIn algo thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, I do. So maybe it's the algorithm, but that stuck out to me as like, huh, I was always worried about, people taking me seriously or having negative attention brought on RP or HubSpot, whatever. That is not, I was completely wrong about that. It was actually the thing that was working for a lot of the audience.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that? I mean, it was kind of a revelation whenever I heard that, as funny as it is now. Like, hey, you used to be funny. Like,
Right.
man,
No, I think a lot of what you just said brings it back to like authenticity. Like it's not, a lot of people use it as a buzzword, I think, but it's not in terms of uh, you just got to be you. Like you can't. But as we talk about this, like, and this is maybe why the scripting, like the scripting stuff, the pre-production, the high production value stuff, has its place, but it's almost like it where it doesn't work if you're trying to be you in a and you have this script and you like create all this structure around you to make sure that you're going to be you, like, all right, and because what you're doing is you're making sure that you're not going to be you because you're putting these expectations on yourself. Like even in that case, like if you went out of your way too far, like, and you see people do this all the time, you can be like, oh, that dude's trying too hard, right? Like it's like, oh, I gotta be funny, like this thing has to hit, right? Like if you're in that mode all the time, you're not going to be funny, right?
yeah,
But I think that the space that the pre-production and the scripting like has its place is when you create this other persona, right? This other thing, and it takes me back to like when George was launching his Sidekick Strategies website and agency. Like he made the choice to use AI images, or he made the choice to use an aesthetic for his site that made it okay for him to use AI generated images at a time when it wasn't the best. And you're hearing a lot about, oh, AI's got a long ways to go, right? But he chose that route and now he's able to do it that way, right? I think that's where a lot of the choice of understanding who your audience is and how you'd like them to feel, after watching your stuff is still super important. But I think like it's okay to figure that out as you're getting started because it's very easy to say, oh, I got to get all these ducks in a row and then never get started. And I'd like to wrap uh, with it, like this calendar I bought. I've listened to a lot of Seth Godin's most recent stuff, especially like Song of Significance, and I don't know if it was called Ship It, but it was something about shipping. And he created this daily calendar here, um, that is the Ship It calendar. And I haven't gone past April 30th because April 30th says, did you publish? They, whoever they is, made it easy for you to raise your hand. They made it easy for you to put your words online, your song in the cloud, your building designs, business plans, and videos out in the world. They made it easy for you to be generous, to connect, and to lead. Did you? Maybe today's the day.
so number one, we have to end on a more positive note than that if we're ending. I have a rebuttal, and I don't think it's anything except one very specific point where you mentioned George using AI and whatnot, but he made a conscious decision to show up when it wasn't popular. Like he made a choice to do that. Here's another quote, and I'm going to attempt to show a video nobody's seen yet to make the point. If I can share screen here in a second, but I don't know who said this. I love Mike Greenberg. I would listen to Greeny every day. He's got 2 books out that are unbelievable. I feel like he's released them near my birthday, so it's really top of mind. One of his contentions is that like there's nothing better in the world than investing absolutely everything into something that doesn't mean anything, and that's his take on sports fandom. You can use the same approach when it's like, why in the hell would you do an inbound recap like I'm going to show you hopefully here in a second? It's like part of that is the character, but part of it also is like there's a sense of pride and a differentiator that I think is witnessing of that kind of suffering for greatness, like the passion concept I was talking about. Whether you like or it generates a deal or revenue is almost beside the point. It's just the witnessing of like, man, I think the caption I'm going to use is like, we're not a media team. Imagine how good we are at HubSpot. So we can, if I'm able to share this, it's a little
Yeah.
first look here.
We gotta, so like a minute or two?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
about 90 seconds.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's build exclusive. Or let's build
share audio,
Premiere.
share tab or screen instead. All right, I'm just going to share my whole screen. Can you see this?
I can.
All right, check it out.
I cannot hear it if there's sound.
No audio?
No.
Oh, you got to hear the sound. Maybe we'll withdraw that because it doesn't make any sense to do it without the sound.
Well, we will look forward to seeing it on the feed shortly. But that's it. Like that's like, we do this stuff all the time. Like, don't hesitate trying. Like, it's not always going to work out. There's no harm in saying, hey, didn't work. We'll get it next time. I think that's a great way to end this one. And again, like, let us know what you guys want to see. We know there's a will. There's a fear of missing out plus the overwhelm. We got to figure out that middle ground where people are creating value and other people are receiving that value as much as we can. And that's the goal here. So as you think about maybe your content feed, all the places you go, what you'd like to improve, please reach out, but also find those opportunities and let's grow. Yep. Have a great day, everybody.
See ya. Thanks, Chris.